Rather than dissecting a frog like in 8th grade, today we're going to dissect these 4 chucks. This is a Jacobs Ballbearing Super Chuck, size number 14N, which just means it has a capacity of up to 1/2 inch diameter. Jacobs patented the first drill chuck in 1902. The Ballbearing Super Chuck, however, was designed in 1942. This particular chuck came with a drill press that I restored a few years back, but it was so clogged with crustified grease that it just didn't work. Now that we've established the who, what, when, where, and why, let's dive into the how. I set the chuck up so only the outer rim is supported. A pipe of the correct diameter would have been much better than what I'm doing here, but this is what I had. With the guts pressed out, let's take a look at what we have. Outer sleeve out of the way, and have a look at that. I think I found this Charles's namesake. Should have counted these on the way out, but I didn't, because I'm rebellious and have no cause. So feast your eyes upon this mess. Not to break down the fourth wall or anything, but this is actually the second time I took this chuck apart. I took it apart and started cleaning it, then I decided I wanted to film this. It's a good thing I didn't show you what it looked like the first time. Instead, I'll paint a picture with words. Imagine this drill truck was fed a strict diet of haggis and mushy peas. Then it got sick from shooting too much tequila. Yeah, so you're welcome for not showing you that. Here's the magical part of this chuck. It's called the split nut. I would have called it the broken nut, but more on this little piece of genius later. I break out the mighty ultrasonic cleaner, dump in some simple green and water. I turn up the temp and start loading. I like to float little parts in a Tupperware that I stole from my old lady. No. After 40 minutes of buzz, the parts are looking clean enough to evacuate. After taking the parts out of the ultrasonic cleaner, I let them cool for a couple of minutes, and then I rinse them in water. Upon inspection, they look pretty clean, but I decide to give them a quick brushing with a stainless steel brush. After brushing, the parts look pretty nice, so I decide to give both the parts and my glorious bare chest a light coat of oil. Let's take a closer look at the split nut, which I find to be totally ingenious. So this part's machined, and then the threading is cut, and keep in mind the threading has a taper to it. Once that's done, 2 scoring cuts are made, and then the part is actually cracked in half, and I'll show why this is in just a moment. Each of Charles's 3 jaws has different threading cut onto it. This is so the jaws meet perfectly at the center. If they were the same, it would look as though Charles needed braces when he opens his mouth. Jacobs has a diagram on their website of how to identify and number each jaw, and it's based on the shape the threading makes on this little inside corner. 3, 2, 1, blast off. The body of the chuck is easier to identify. With parts clean, it's time to reassemble. I liberally apply blue raspberry grease. I didn't show it on camera, but I made sure the jaws got a little grease on the back side as well. This is the lower race that the bearings ride on. Here's the reason the split nut must be broken. It needs to clamp around the body and make contact with the threading on the jaws. Were this to be made as 2 different pieces, machining the threading and having everything match up perfect would have been impossible. Also, right now I'm making sure that the split nut is seated on each of the jaws. This requires a little fidgeting with my poker. If this were done incorrectly, the jaws would be uneven. Putting the ball bearings back in is a pain, but it is straightforward. One thing to note, once the bearings are all back in place, the split nut is held firm. It won't fall out. The machining, specifically the grooves for the balls to run in, is tight enough to where it can't be taken apart with the ball bearings in place. I'm guessing here because I didn't do inventory on the way out, but I think this is all of them because another one wouldn't fit. The last little bit of genius in this design is how the outer sleeve is pressed on. It's designed to only have a press fit to the split nut, and this is how spinning the outer sleeve moves the jaws in and out. Opposite of what we did before, again, I think it would be better to use a proper size pipe to support the sleeve while pressing. Everything has been put back together properly when the jaws are centered and protrude evenly. This is similar to the chuck we just cleaned up, however it's keyless, which is cool, I guess. This is also a Jacobs high precision version, meaning it's guaranteed to have less than a certain amount of run out. For woodworkers, it's totally not needed. I bought this chuck because I have plans to own a mill one day where that greater accuracy can be needed. Here's how you install a chuck into a drill press. Step 1, clean both male and female parts of the Morse taper, which in this case is a size number 2, also called an MT2. Step 2 is to align and then jam. The jam is just to hold it in place. Next, preferably get a wooden mallet, second choice is rubber mallet, and give it a good whack. This will set the two tapers to each other, and that's all that holds a drill press chuck on. Taking a chuck off is even easier. Use this little wedge tool. In some cases, you'll need to open up the side of your drill press or lower the quill to gain access to the port. Now the best way to do this is to move the table out of the way and don't put your hand under the chuck. Just let the concrete floor catch it. Here's a lesser known chuck, but still found in many wood shops. This is a Westcott chuck, or the Little Giant Auxiliary Screw Drill Chuck if you're not into the whole brevity thing. Looks like this one was made in 1917 in Oneida, New York. Let's take this bad boy apart and see what we have here. This first bolt is a secondary lock and it's not found on newer versions. After the face ring comes off, the jaws are simply unscrewed out of the body. Certainly fewer parts than a Jacobs chuck. One of the benefits of this style of chuck is it can handle more of a side load, which makes it perfect for a slot mortiser. Fast forward nearly 100 years, and as it turns out, Westcott chucks really haven't changed all that much. Last time I used my slot mortiser, the bit was slipping in the chuck. Well, it turns out it was so packed with dust that it couldn't close tightly. So let's give this one a good cleaning. With the jaws removed, this thing is wildly out of balance. And the machining on the body is very interesting to me, and it must be done very accurately. Here's a closer look at the jaws. If you look carefully, you can see markings where I've had bits spinning. It also becomes obvious why this chuck does better with side load pressure. The bit has a long area of contact across the whole jaw, and being that the jaws are moved in and out from the center point, they'll apply pressure evenly across their whole width. Sawdust finds its way in and makes itself a comfy home. Eventually, you end up clamping sawdust and not the bit. Pro tip, buy yourself a variety pack of stainless steel brushes. They're invaluable for cleaning stuff. Lately, I've been using PTFE lubricant. It stands for polytetrafluoroethylene, I think. It's also known by its street name Teflon. My thought is that since it's not greasy or oily, it will lubricate without being a sticky dust magnet. After dropping the screw mechanism in place, it's just a matter of using it to screw the jaws in. Once in place, I use this pointy setup tool I made to make sure that everything's concentric. After evicting all the sawdust and bringing in my new tenant, Mr. Teflon, this thing works beautifully. Lastly, the faceplate goes on and I'm ready to cut some mortises. These little hand drills are affectionately known as egg beater drills. Oftentimes they will have a spring chuck in them. These are very simple chucks. The patent for the Parsons spring chuck was issued in 1900 to noted Massachusetts inventor William J. Parsons, who, correct me if I'm wrong, 75 years later founded British rock band the Alan Parsons Project. If you're a Michael Jordan fan, you already know one of their songs. All this to give a song recommendation for this video, Eye in the Sky by the Alan Parsons Project. These drills are great to have around the shop. They drill surprisingly well so long as the bit is small. If you're going to buy one, look for a Miller Falls 2A or number 5. A nice addition to any shop. If you turn bowls on a lathe, you may know what this is. It's a 4-jaw scroll chuck. Very descriptive name. The jaws tighten up around a foot on a hunk of wood, which allows the carving of a bowl. After taking off the jaws, the next step is this giant snap ring, followed by a little tiny grub screw. Now smack this thing like a rented mule to get the back cover off, and things start to get a little more interesting from this point forward. I don't know if you'd call this a ring and pinion gear set, but that sounds right to me. Once the ring gear is out, further inspection shows why this is called a scroll chuck. A scroll gear, or sometimes called a scroll plate, has been machined onto the back of the ring gear. Wasn't totally sure if these sub-jaws needed to be fitted back into the same slots. I wasn't going to chance it, so I labeled them. This tool is known as an engraving pen, I think. It's very useful when rebuilding mechanical things. After a good scrubbing, more PFTE lubricant is applied and reassembly begins. It's funny, as a carpenter who makes his living with his tools, I find myself getting mad when a tool doesn't work properly. Most of the time, when I slow down and inspect, that tool is just in need of maintenance. That really is the point of this video. It's just to share that chucks aren't maintenance-free items. And it's probably a good idea once every 10 or so years to open them up, give them a good cleaning and lube, and they'll work like new when done. The rear cover plate, grub screw, and snap ring all go back on. Reinstall the jaws, and now this thing's ready for action.
What I did was
Couple quick action shots of the 4-jaw scroll chuck. These shots were lifted from a video where I turned a super bowl. That's lowercase, it's not a proper noun. Not trying to step on anyone's trademark, I'm just trying to accurately describe my bowl. Check out that video if you're interested. Hope this video has been both interesting and not vomitous. Okay, time to go. I'm tired of my sense of humor. Till next time, thanks for watching.